second?
Yeah, I'm putting them up.
I'll get it. I'll get it for you.
You want yours?
All right, 6 o'clock.
I feel like I'm basically bulletproof now.
Good evening. I'd like to call the September meeting of the Washington County Quorum Court to order. Judge Wood is out of town today. He asked me to start this meeting, and our first order of business is to elect a chair. So at this time, I'll take nominations for chair. Mr. Justice Duncan.
I move that J.P. Johnson be elected as chairman for the meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for J.P. Johnson to serve as chair. Is there another motion?
I move for
Justice Rio Stafford.
I move for J.P. Madison to be chair.
Thank you. Do we need to vote? Is there a second? I can't hear her. Okay. How do we do this? One for each?
Yeah, vote for the first nomination and then vote for the second nomination.
Okay, those in favor of J.P. Johnson, raise your hand.
Motion carries.
Those in favor of J.P. Madison?
1, 2, 3.
I guess I'll chair the meeting. Thank you. I've asked J.P. Duncan to lead us in the prayer and the pledge, so if you'd all stand, please.
Father God, thank you for your goodness. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to serve Washington County. God, we pray for wisdom tonight as we chair the meeting, as we work through county business. God, help us make good decisions on behalf of our constituents and the other members of Washington County. God, thank you for your goodness. And in your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two items that I'd like to add this evening. We'll consider them separately. The first one I would like to add is item 21-0-108. This is an emergency ordinance to help fund FHA during a rough time. I make a motion we suspend the rules and add this to the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That item will be added. Are there any other items to be added? Justice Deakins.
Yeah, the second one I had, Mr. Chairman, is item 21-0-107. This is the finalized ordinance for our budget. It was moved up to this body near unanimously, and I would like to add it to the agenda so we can start considering it. I make a motion that we suspend the rules and add it to the agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Justice Madison.
Thank you. We cannot support this last-minute procedural addition of the largest ordinance that we have responsibility for. What's concerning the most is that if you followed along at our last Budget and Finance meeting, each individual budget was reviewed up or down and voted on by the committee without the opportunity for any public comment at all. And when citizens objected, they were informed that it wasn't an ordinance. Then they were told it was a resolution. Then when they were asked to give public comment on a resolution, they were told it's not a resolution either. This body chose to have all ordinances originate in committee, which means that every ordinance will have an opportunity for public comment in committee. And so to pass along significant expenditures, denying the opportunity for public comment, and then not putting it on an agenda to publish to the citizens, and then trying to make a last-minute addition, shows that the people who are controlling this court want nothing more than to do what they wish without having to listen to any member of the public that might criticize them. This sets a terrible precedent for the most important budget or the most important ordinance that we pass on a yearly basis. So I feel sure that the majority of this court's going to let this through, but I would say to the citizens, you need to demand better. We say that you have a right to public comment, and we're denying that and trying intentionally to slip in things at the last minute without notice to the public. And we should be ashamed of ourselves.
Justice Real Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add to that today we've gotten requests from both Judge Warren's court and from the Public Defender's Office for reconsideration of parts of this budget. And so I'd like to move to have this ordinance sent back to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Tell me what she said.
She made a motion to send it back to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay. We have a motion to send it back to committee. Is there discussion on that motion?
Well, it's not proper to send it back to committee because it's not on the agenda.
Okay. Now, the county attorney says we cannot send it back to the committee because it's not on the agenda. Is there other discussion on the ordinance to add to the agenda? Justice Ecke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick comment. With all due respect to my colleague, I'm not ashamed of myself, and I'm not ashamed of the decisions that I make, speaking for myself. Secondly, public comment. We will have public comment today for all of the recommendations that were passed through the Budget and Finance Committee. And now is the time for public comment. And so to say that we silence the public is really not an accurate statement because the public comments are welcomed during the beginning and during the process of this court. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
She's not.
Yeah,
Hearing aids.
Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, some of us on this body I know are committed to obstruction and delay, but I want to thank the committee members on the Budget Committee. There's no surprises in here. There's nothing slipped in here. We've methodically went through this budget for a couple months now. It would be only a delay tactic not to let this body start deliberating this budget. If there are additional changes that want to be made, the justices are very welcome to do that and make motions, and we're going to vote on them, and the public's going to have the opportunity to speak to it. But at this point, the body has moved up to the Quorum Court of Budget, and it's time to get moving on that budget. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there other comments?
I have a point of order if this is proper, since it didn't come out of committee in an ordinance and violated. If it was supposed to be an ordinance form and then public comment was denied by the chair, then how is it properly here?
You have an ordinance that was passed earlier at the beginning of this year. I think it was sponsored by J.P. Wilson, that any ordinance can be added at the meeting with a 2/3 vote. So even though there wasn't an ordinance then, it's just like the ordinance you just added. It didn't come out of committee either, but it was added to the agenda because procedurally you can do that.
And how was the public supposed to know about it if it wasn't on the agenda tonight?
Same thing with any ordinance that gets added, which is why it has to have 2/3 vote.
Not unexpected advice from our county attorney.
Are there other comments? Are you ready for the question? All in favor of adding Justice Deacon's motion to the agenda, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Miss Patty, roll call, please.
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison.
What is the vote, Ms. Patty?
10-4 and 5 against.
10-4. Motion
So-
passes. I'll now entertain a motion to pass the budget or the agenda as amended.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Do we discuss that? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, are there any preliminary motions?
I move that we read ordinances and resolutions by title only.
You telling me? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. The motion passes.
I believe you're hearing the chair's hearing aids.
Okay, at this time, we will have citizens comment. County Ordinance 2016-66 sets a total of 15 minutes for comments. Each citizen will be limited to 3 minutes. When you are called upon to speak, please state your name and where you live. Are there any citizens who wish to comment?
Good evening. I'm Judge Diane Warren. I live in Fayetteville, and I'm here to speak to the budget for Division 8 of the Circuit Court. This is in your additional agenda item that will be on the agenda tonight. Circuit Court Division 8 was created effective January 1st of 2021, and since that date, Division 8 has been handling 1/2 of all juvenile court cases. Those are dependency, neglect, family in need of services, and delinquency cases. Division 3 has been hearing the other 1/2 of the juvenile cases, and in that same period of time, the budget for Division 3 was $1.3 million. The budget for Division 8 was $16,000. This year, my request is that the 2 courts, which are tasked with the same function and which handle an equal number of cases, be equally funded. The only reason that Division 8 was able to serve the public as it was created to do was because the juvenile officers who are budgeted through Division 3, hired, fired, supervised, and managed by Division 3, also appeared in Division 8. My request this year is to allow me to hire, supervise, and manage those officers who appear in Division 8. It's good policy, and it's the law. Arkansas statute requires that each division of court that handles juvenile cases be assigned at least one intake officer and one probation officer. The law clearly intends that each division of court that handles juvenile cases house its own juvenile officers. This year, my proposed budget requested a total of 11 employees at a total cost of $406,457. That was approximately half of the request of Division 3, whose original request was $818,000. The Budget and Finance Committee resolved to recommend to Quorum Court that we not add all new money to fund Division 8, but that instead we transfer 5 positions from Division 3 to Division 8, and we add new money to fund those additional positions. The revised budget that you have before you was not created by me. It is not presented by me. It was created after the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, after Division 3 had decided which lines to transfer, and someone other than me put together those numbers. The total cost of juvenile court as revised between Divisions 3 and 8 is $963,000. Division 3 has 65% of the funding, and Division 8 has 34%. I am asking that the Quorum Court send the budgets for Division 8 and Division 3.
Judge Warren, your 3 minutes. Your time is up, ma'am. Do you want to restate your motion, Justice, with the microphone on?
I make a motion to expend our time. Whatever it takes.
We have a motion to extend the time indefinitely. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
Thank you. Okay. I'm asking that the Quorum Court send the budgets for Division 3 and Division 8 back to the Budget and Finance Committee with the directive that the 2 juvenile courts be equally funded, or direct that a sum sufficient to cover my initial request of $406,000 be transferred from the Division 3 budget, or that this body allocate the sum of $406,457 be allocated for new salaries and personnel in Division 8. Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Thank you all for listening to us today. I'm Judge Zimmerman. I'm the Division 3 juvenile judge, and I'm here to speak about our juvenile budget for Division 3. When we came to the Finance and Budget Committee last Tuesday night, the Finance Committee made a motion to amend the budget submitted by Division 3 and Division 8. The reason that Division 3 budget is larger than Division 8 is because we run the diversion programs that you all funded. We have the Youth Reporting Center in Springdale. I came to you all in 2017. I asked for 3 probation officers for that program. The first year that program was in operation, the Jones Center, the Jones Trust, said we could have free rent for the first year. That program is for medium to high risk juveniles that are on probation, and we directed that in Springdale on Emma Street because at that time we were having some disproportionate minority youth lockup. We were having disproportionate minority arrests, and so we asked for the money from the Quorum Court for those positions. We had the program approved, we asked for the money, and those 3 positions were funded. That is a program that serves Division 3 and Division 8, and those are 3 positions. Another position that is in our budget, not in Division 8's budget, is our program director for diversion programs. Every year we come to the Quorum Court and we talk about our Creating Lasting Family Connections program in the evenings, where families come in the evenings after work to have an instructor discuss with them and their children and work with them about healthy relationships, communication, and it's an outreach to the families in both divisions. That was a program that I created, and we came to the Quorum Court for funding. We weren't just given a big old chunk of money, $400,000, and say, just find some program. These were programs that I came to the Quorum Court to ask for funding. These are programs that benefit both divisions, and children in both divisions go to those programs. That is why we have more officers in Division 3 than we do in Division 8. That is why we have more food on our line item than Division 8, because we feed the families, we feed the children, and our youth reporting center runs after school till 8:30 at night with 3 probation officers in that program, 10 kids at a time every 30 days, and these are medium to high-risk kids who work with the staff, they work with the extension service people that come and present programs. That's a difference right there. I'd also want to point out that in the $1.3 million in Division 3 budget, $220,000.
Justice Zimmerman, would you wrap up, please?
Thank you. And so out of the $1.3 million in Division 3, not only does it provide these diversion programs that are already up and running, that the Quorum Court funded when the program was presented to the court by having extra positions. In addition to that, $220,000 was reimbursed to Washington County General Fund for the certified juvenile court officers. We have 16 slots. And of those 16 slots, $15,000 is reimbursed to the county. That's the maximum per spot, $15,000. So our budget does not reflect that reimbursement, nor does it reflect the grants that we've applied for our diversion programs. So that is why there is a difference in the amount of money requested, even if you didn't look at, well, this is Juvenile Court Division 3. You look at the diversion order, the diversion officers, you take those away, then you have roughly 9, 10 juvenile court officers versus the 9 or 10 that Judge Warren is requesting, in addition to a program coordinator, which would be like the director of juvenile court in Division 3. And then I must just add this I think is so important. Our juvenile officers are certified by the state. They're trained. And at that meeting on Tuesday night, and the Quorum Court, or the Finance Committee's wisdom was, Judge Warren's court should get 4 additional officers, and 5 people should come from Division 3 to Division 8. That's 9 officers. They did not move the 5 officers in Juvenile Court Division 3, the director, and those that help with our programs that have already been approved programs through the Quorum Court that benefit both divisions. So at that meeting, the direction that I was given was that Division 3 needs to move 5 people from its budget to Division 8, and that would take place on January 1st. So I started looking at who do we need to move. We need to have some intake officers. We need to have some probation officers, so it's a good mix. So in good faith, I contacted Mr. Lester, who contacted me, what are the slots you need to move? And so I said, and then the day after I get a letter from Judge Warren that she does not plan to keep those people. So on January 1st, if she decides to fire those people that all are certified, that are good officers, she can do that. So I, in good faith, said these are the spots, these are the people that are going, and then find that out. And these are people that are good, hardworking people who work for Washington County, who make children their priority. They don't work for the money. And so, in conclusion, I will do what this Quorum Court tells me to do. You are the keeper of the purse strings. And I just know that you wouldn't want my job and I wouldn't want your job. So I will respectfully follow what it is you direct me to do. But I want you to remember that the kids and families of Washington County are in crisis. These are pandemic times. And people come to us for help. And they need to have enough officers that can give the kids help so they don't end up on the streets in prison, and that we have healthy families, and every family can use some help. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Next speaker.
My name's Blake Chancellor. I'm a public defender here in Washington County. And I just want to make sure, as was mentioned earlier, there was an email sent out asking you to reconsider and send our budget back to the committee. Basically, the main issue is the disparage in pay between the prosecutors, county attorneys, and the public defenders, county attorneys. This is not a lot of money comparatively to your budget. And to be honest with you, I wasn't real sure what was going on tonight, so I'm not as prepared as maybe some of the judges were. But our attorneys are asked to do a lot. This court has asked us to address the backlog. We've talked about that many times. I am frankly befuddled as to how equal pay between a prosecutor's position and a public defender's position was denied. These are attorneys with these kind of positions that have to, we're not hiring attorneys that have massive amounts of experience. These are positions that have to be trained in. And although most of our attorneys, if not all of them, this is not just a job. They are asked to go and do things above and beyond every day. And they put their heart into that. But the realities of this world are that payment is an issue. And when you have a prosecutor's position that is the same starting entry-level position that makes more than the public defender's office, you are setting us up for failure. Those positions are going to turn over. You've asked us to be efficient. We've tried to be efficient. We have instituted different policies and different things to try and help the system, to try and make this go quicker, to address that backlog that this court has been so concerned about. And this decision has hamstrung that. And all I'm asking is that you go back and give a full discussion and an opportunity. I don't know, I've heard comments that somehow we did not answer all your questions. I have not received any phone calls or anything from anybody asking us any questions, if there were questions that were unanswered. But again, this is not a large sum of money. All we're asking for is equal pay between the two positions. And I'm sorry, but I think that for our attorneys and for this county, especially in this backlog that we have, I think it is more than reasonable to ask you to reconsider that and to have that full discussion.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Norma Oriana Frisbee. I'm from Springdale, Arkansas. I'm the Director of Juvenile Court Services for Division 3. And today I speak for myself and the rest of the staff I have helped supervise for the last 20 years that I have worked for Division 3. We don't understand why the Finance Committee did not meet with us, each one of our officers, to truly understand our work before making the decision to remove 5 of our staff and transfer them over to Division 8. Have you considered that they are at risk of losing their jobs once they're sent to Division 8? Each division needs their own staff without reducing the slots of Division 3. That is not going to help reduce the workload that we have in Division 3 right now. I want to remind you all that we are just not slot numbers and dollar signs to you. We are county employees that have worked tirelessly before and during the pandemic. All last year, we had to meet with probationers. We had to conduct drug screens. We had to do home visits. We had to detain youth. Myself and another female officer had to detain a female while she spit, coughed, kicked at us while we took her to JDC. We put ourselves at risk of getting COVID. And the thanks we get for this is to tell us continue to work harder because now we're taking 5 of your staff away and not helping you with that caseload. I want to ask the Quorum Court to not vote in favor of passing Division 3 and 8's budget today until you have the chance to meet with the probation and intake officers from Division 3. Our staff have been under a lot of stress and very, very unhealthy work situations, not just because of the pandemic, but also because we've been divided within 2 divisions since January. That has caused a lot of stress on our staff. Expectations are high, and so far, all I see is Judge Zimmerman supporting us, no one else. Some of you of the JP sitting here have seen Judge Zimmerman and I come before you in previous years and have brought to you data and supportive information to show you why we needed more staff, why we needed funds for our diversion programs. If you take away our staff, I fear that in a few years, we're going to be here talking about expanding our JDC and not continuing to support our diversion programs with the staff we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Kelly. I live in Prairie Grove. For the past 15 years, I've had the privilege of working for the Washington County Juvenile Court in Division 3, where I currently serve as the staff manager and lead juvenile officer for the Juvenile Court. I'd hoped that the addition of a second juvenile judge for Washington County earlier this year would be the first step towards hiring a significant number of additional juvenile officers to help alleviate the heavy workloads that our hardworking juvenile officers have had to shoulder over the years. Our county's population and court cases have increased to a point that justified doubling the number of juvenile judges, and it should follow that there's enough to also justify greatly expanding the number of juvenile officers too, especially considering the significant time involvement required by our juvenile officers on each juvenile case. The juvenile judges are undoubtedly deeply involved in a juvenile's case during the hearings held in their court. However, juvenile officers' involvement in a case extends beyond the court hearings, with additional responsibilities for weeks prior to a juvenile's first hearing in front of a judge, as well as ongoing duties for months or even years after a juvenile's final court hearing in front of a judge. While the addition of a second juvenile judge has effectively halved the workload of the judges, the workload of the juvenile officers has remained the same and even increased in some respects. The Finance Committee's recent recommendation to split off 5 of the current Division 3 juvenile officers and transfer them to Division 8 in January would do little to alleviate the heavy workloads experienced by our juvenile officers, even with the committee's allowance for the creation of 4 additional juvenile officer positions to be hired by Division 8. While adding 4 more juvenile officers overall is certainly a better proposition than none, it's less than what's needed. And as the plan currently stands, with the positions that we had to choose, the 5 specific positions that are being transferred mean that Division 3 will be losing nearly half of our delinquency intake and probation officers. So while the remaining Division 3 officers will no longer be handling additional Division 8 cases as of next year, it does not appear that their individual workloads will noticeably decrease, with 50% fewer delinquency cases, but nearly 50% fewer officers in those departments to work them. Therefore, I urge the Quorum Court to reconsider the Finance Committee's recommendation to transfer 5 of the existing Division 3 juvenile officers, instead letting these positions remain in Division 3 and expanding Division 8's budget to include a number of additional new juvenile officer positions. This move will help further decrease each individual officer's workload. And while it would require investing more money in these additional positions, it will reap future savings. By significantly decreasing individual workloads and allowing juvenile officers to devote more time to each juvenile and each family, plus allowing both juvenile court divisions to have the staff needed to provide additional new services and programs for our court-involved youth, investing in these additional Division 8 juvenile officer positions will improve rehabilitation and decrease the cost of future incarceration of repeat offenders in both the juvenile detention center and later the adult jail. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our public comment time has expired. Sir, would you wait until I give you the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move that we extend the time for 6 minutes. That would be 3 for both last 2 standing.
Motion is second. All in favor, say
Aye.
Those opposed, no. We're extended for 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, JP Dennis. Thank you, Court. I'm Josh Moody, Fayetteville. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, but I certainly think it pertains to what's already been said tonight. I'm a teacher. Sometimes teachers like to review before tests. Sounds like tonight we have a big test. So let's review. From the Code of Ordinances. Section 233, Introduction of Ordinances. The Quorum Court recognizes the need for an efficient manner in which ordinances shall be introduced. All general ordinances shall be presented to the county attorney by the member of the Quorum Court sponsoring that ordinance in rough draft form, at least 5 working days prior to the date of the Quorum Court meeting, at which the member of the Quorum Court wishes to introduce the ordinance. The county attorney shall review the ordinance in rough draft form for legal sufficiency and prepare it in proper legal form and forward to the court secretary for meeting scheduling. The court secretary shall cause to be sent to each member of the Quorum Court a copy of the ordinance at least 6 days prior to the regular meeting of the Quorum Court at which the ordinance is to be presented. Any ordinance that does not comply with the requirements herein shall be deemed to be out of order if presented at a meeting of the Quorum Court, provided, however, that by a majority vote of the members of Quorum Court, the requirements herein may be suspended. Unless otherwise specified by the sponsor, all ordinances submitted to the Quorum Court for approval shall be written in the following manner. I'll save you the details on that part. Section 232, Citizen Comments. After Quorum Court discussion at any Quorum Court meeting and before the vote on the final passage of any ordinance or resolution, or what we might call a recommendation, a 12-minute period shall be allowed for citizen comment, with speakers alternating as proponents and opponents. No individual may speak longer than 3 minutes. At the beginning of each Quorum Court meeting, there shall be a 15-minute period. Moving on. Additional time may be added. Thank you. Written comments are welcome. A specific resource may be called upon by any Quorum Court member at any time during consideration. Moving on. Point being, if this was a recommendation or an ordinance or a resolution or whatever we would like to call it, I believe all of these rules, laws, codes, whatever you'd like to call them, still pertain to what's happening tonight. So let's take a pause, let's hear what's being said, and let's think about what we're doing here. We're setting a dangerous precedent once again. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, I'm Evan Greasy. I am from Fayetteville, and I'd like to raise the issue of the emergency rental assistance program. There are millions of dollars as of August left in the fund, and it will be expiring September 30th. It will be allocated to other counties around the world, around the country rather. From January 1st to August 30th, there was $3.4 million out of the $7.2 million allocated, spent, given out as emergency rental assistance. I call on this body to have more transparency and to put out a plan to get the rest of this money out to Washington County renters. Now, some suggestions is to drop the requirement for landlords to approve of their tenants' applications and stop allowing landlords to pick and choose what tenants they allow to get this money. Now, I would prefer that all evictions would be ceased, but failing that, at least let us know how this money is being allocated, what the plan is to allocate it, and give it to Washington County renters. Thank you.
Thank you. The public comment period is ended. Okay, the minutes were emailed out with the agenda packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Item 7, you have a disposal of county property report in your packet. Are there any questions or comments? Justice Madison.
I was curious where the county judge was.
Mr. Lester, would you read item number 8 on the agenda?
Item 8 is an ordinance on its third and final reading, an ordinance repealing ordinance 2016-68 and setting the salaries of the executive branch.
Justice Wilson?
I move for the approval of this ordinance. This will bring the other 4 countywide officers up to the full amount allowed by law, as the other 4 already are. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to pass this ordinance. Discussion. Public comment.
Sarah Moore, Fayetteville. I know that this has been quite a conversation in regard to compensation for different county employees and for elected officials. At many of the finance and budget and other full quorum court meetings, I know that I brought up in conversation and talked to some of you justices in regard to the inequity in pay. And I appreciate that there has been some conversation and some movement in regard to county employees with the 10% that we're looking at. But I also asked many times about the lowest earners in our community, those folks that are making under $15. I shared with some of you the Bread of Life information that showed that a family of 4 in our area, in our county, needed to make around $15 an hour to actually make it and survive in our community. That's to afford childcare, pay all of their bills, and to not be in extreme poverty. We know that we have over 100 county employees that currently make less than $15 an hour today. That 10%, while again, I appreciate, is still not going to get those county employees up to that $15, many of those. And I would ask that you hold off on moving anybody that's in these upper brackets of earning, even elected officials, to set an example that it's very important that we're taking care of the least amongst us. And especially many of these members of our county staff have been out there on the front lines during COVID, servicing our county, coming into contact, with folks speaking right directly into their faces, not knowing if they were getting infected by COVID. And so I'd really ask for you tonight to pause on this and not to pass this forward until, in good faith, I've been told several times that we would address those lower earners and that we would get them up to a higher range. The 10% is not enough. We need to get them up to $15, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Blake Chancellor, Public Defender again. And I'll be brief. Again, as I told you before, I'm very disheartened. And as I think I've had this conversation with Mr. Lester, I am the most apolitical person. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, makes no difference to me. But personally, I can't help but be a little disheartened by how this court has asked us to do a lot of things and to become more efficient. And to have this motion and this ordinance right after denying just simple equal pay between the prosecutors and the public defenders leaves a very bad taste in my mouth. And again, I don't care, Republican, Democrat, Martian, I don't care what you are, but that's not right. And how are our attorneys supposed to feel to that? How am I supposed to feel every time this court comes to me and asks a huge sacrifice to address this backlog, to put in extra hours? You don't want to know how many hours I've worked this week. And and it's well beyond what I'm being paid for. And all of our attorneys go through that. and this just leaves a horrible taste in the mouth.
Thank you. Other public comment? Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison.
Ms. Patty, is 9-4 the correct vote? The motion passes. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Lester, would you read the resolution, item 9?
Item 9 is a resolution authorizing Terry Sargent to solemnize the marriage of Andrew Michael Evans. And I will apologize to the lady whose name I'm probably going to butcher, Delaney Villava Sarath, on October the 2nd, 2021 in Washington County, Arkansas.
Justice Pond.
Are any of the parties here this evening pertaining to this, the bride or the groom or the individual officiating the wedding? I pray that this young bride and groom receive every good and perfect gift, and may the Lord's countenance be on them. I move we pass this resolution.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any public comment? Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison. This resolution passes.
This motion passes. Item 10, Mr. Lester, would you read the ordinance?
Item 10 is an ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Springdale Public Schools solar facility, and this is on its first reading.
Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, like it says, it's for a solar array that this middle school wants to put in off of 412 out by Sonora. I've received no public comments on this, and it passed the planning committee unanimously with the members there. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and take this to the second reading.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Do we vote?
Yeah.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Springdale Public Schools solar facility.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to suspend the rules and move this to the third and final reading.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and move to a third and final meeting, third and final reading. I'm trying to look and talk. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board of the Springdale Public Schools solar facility.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move passage of item number 10. Sorry. Item number.
We have a motion and pass item number 10. Is there a second? Do we have to roll call? Public comment.
Hi, Sarah Moore still from Fayetteville. I just have a procedural question. I mean, I know we can advance this to a third, but I would just say I would hope that's not going to be a precedent we're going to get into, especially for things that are conditional use permits, because the public, while this probably is hopefully not controversial, there's a lot going on in our communities, and it just takes time for folks to hear about things. So if it doesn't harm the school district to wait till the next meeting to give the opportunity for the community to actually know about this before we pass it forward, and in the event there's someone that has a concern that comes forward, this won't just be moving forward without them knowing. So I would ask that you don't pass it here on the third reading tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Is there other public comment? Okay, we have a motion to pass this ordinance. It's on its third reading. Ms. Patty.
Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Jim Wilson. Yes. Butch Pond. Yes. Lance Johnson.
Yes.
Shannon Marty. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes. Bill Usry. Yes. Patrick Deakins.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Sam Duncan.
Yes.
Shonda Washington.
Yes.
Eva Madison. This ordinance passes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 11 on the ordinance, or on the agenda. Mr. Lester, would you read the ordinance?
Item 11 is an ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Beaver Lake Food Truck Court, and this is on its first reading.
Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for, like Councilor Lester said, a food truck court that's going in right next to 412 as you make your way out to Sonora. And I think their hope is to serve the lake community when they're going out recreating. I think this is good. I've received no public comments about this. This passed unanimously through the planning board. I move to suspend the rules and move this to the second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and move it to the second reading. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Justice Deacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to suspend the rule. Oh, sorry.
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Beaver Lake Food Truck Court.
I make a motion to suspend the rules and move this to the third and final reading.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to suspend the rules and move this to the third and final reading. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Beaver Lake Food Truck Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move passage of item number 11.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the third and final reading. All in favor say aye. We have a motion to pass this ordinance. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment?
Gladys Tiffany, Fayetteville. I just want to point out that Sarah Moore's comment for the last reading was really, really significant, and I really want to emphasize again that the point she made about the possibility for hearing, even though I think this is a wonderful idea, and I'm not objecting to this bill at all, I really do feel like the court really does need to take very seriously its duty to hear public comment and to let people have a chance to know what's going on with the court. It's a very significant thing. I think understanding exactly what public comment does for you as a quorum court is a really important item that the court does not seem to be taking seriously. And I really would like to just emphasize again Sarah's comment from before about the necessity of public comment.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? We have a motion. We have a motion to pass item number 11 on the agenda. We need roll call. Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison. This ordinance passes.
Thank you. This ordinance passes. We'll go to item number 12. Mr. Lester, would you read this ordinance?
Item 12 is an ordinance amending ordinance 2020-12 and changing the date of the May 2022 regular quorum court meeting to accommodate early voting. This ordinance is on its first reading.
Justice Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just to change our meeting date to May 26th to accommodate the May primary early voting taking place in this room so that we don't have to scramble at the last minute. So it's trying to plan ahead. Jennifer's in the room if there are any questions on it, but I would move that we go ahead and move to the second reading.
Second.
Do we have a motion to suspend the rules and move it to a second reading? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Mr. Lester?
An ordinance amending ordinance 2020-12 and changing the date of the May 2022 regular quorum court meeting to accommodate early voting.
Mr. Wilson?
I would move that we suspend the rules and move to the third and final reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and move to a third and final reading. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
An ordinance amending ordinance 2020-12 and changing the date of the May 2022 regular quorum court meeting to accommodate early voting.
Justice Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of item number 12 on our agenda tonight.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this. Is there any discussion? Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just make a comment on the public's misperception or misinformation regarding the seriousness that each JP on this court takes when we are approving an ordinance. This ordinance needs to be advanced to the third reading due to a conflict of scheduling as the others. We take our jobs very seriously. And for us to be slandered and maligned and say that we don't is a disrespectful injustice to each justice of the peace on this court. And I would appreciate a little bit more decorum. Thank you.
Justice Madison?
That was totally off topic and offensive, but I wasn't recognized, so it didn't matter. But we shouldn't be like calling the public names.
Are there other comments? Public comment. Seeing none, Miss Patty?
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison. This ordinance passes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 13, would you read the ordinance, Mr. Lester?
Item 13 is an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $23,229,635.50 in the American Rescue Plan Act Fund and appropriating $23,229,635.50 to the Federal Coronavirus Relief Fund revenue line item in the American Rescue Plan Act budget for 2021.
Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This creates the new account for our American Rescue Plan funds, and this will be the account we'll use to properly account for it and track it. I move passage of item number 13.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Seeing none, public comment.
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison. This ordinance passes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 14, would you read the ordinance, Mr. Lester?
An ordinance recognizing additional revenue of $31,167 in the JDC Grant Fund and appropriating $31,167 from the JDC Grant Fund to the Juvenile Detention Grant in Aid 2021-2022 budget for 2021.
Justice Deakins.
This is a grant that the JDC receives to offset some of our costs. I move passage of item number 14.
We have a motion and a second to pass this ordinance. Do we have any discussion? Public comment. Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison. This ordinance passes.
Thank you. This ordinance passes. Item 15. Counselor, would you read the ordinance?
An ordinance anticipating and appropriating revenue of $30,000 in the AOC Juvenile Court Grant Fund for 2021.
Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a grant that the juvenile courts receive to help fund some of their programs. I move passage of item number 15.
We have a motion and a second to pass this ordinance. Is there discussion? Seeing none, public comment. Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison. This ordinance passes.
Thank you. This motion passes. Next is the appropriation ordinance for the, I don't have a number on it. 21-0-108. You want to read the ordinance, Council?
It's an ordinance appropriating $10,000 from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund to the pass-through payments line item in the 2021 American Rescue Plan Act budget for the Fayetteville Housing Authority and to declare an emergency.
Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank my colleagues for letting us put this on the agenda tonight. This is an emergency appropriation ordinance that was as a result of what I would consider a crisis that was brought to me this afternoon. And what this ordinance will do, it will appropriate $10,000 from our American Rescue Plan funds to the Fayetteville Housing Authority in order to pay overdue utility bills for some of their tenants. And, I just have to say that, I continue to be concerned about that organization, some of the things that we're hearing about them and what's come out in a public forum and what I expect to be additionally come out. But I also want us to consider that by having those utilities cut, this would hurt maybe the most vulnerable in our communities, and so that's why I feel like it's important for us to consider this and try to make a decision on it. The other thing is the total outstanding utilities, from what I can understand, is $18,500, with $10,000 of that being due tomorrow, and that's why this was brought to us tonight, and that's why I think it's such an emergency nature. And what I'm proposing is that we help assist with that, but I'm also proposing, as you can read in the ordinance, that we have an opportunity here to partner with the city of Fayetteville, and that they step up and cover the other costs that are outstanding for the total of the $18,500. I had a short discussion with Mayor Jordan this afternoon and kind of walked him through this plan. I understand I was hitting him cold. This is very complex, and so I would say he was less than receptive, but we'll see what we can do. I feel like this is appropriate for the county to take this move at this time and continue to work with the city of Fayetteville. So I would move passage of item 21-0-108.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Justice Ecke. Discussion. Justice Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When the president of the Housing Board doesn't know anything about this, I'm a little concerned about how this emergency came about. What's interesting is that obviously FHA needs money. They need way more than $10,000, and the citizens of Fayetteville need way more than $10,000 for us to piecemeal out the help that we are able to give out of the $4 million we're still sitting on in CARES funds. But the part of this ordinance that doesn't make any sense, as much as I want to help the people in housing with the Fayetteville Housing Authority, is their rent includes their utilities. So nobody's utilities are due tomorrow. Nobody's going to lose your utilities because they can't pay their bills. It's included in their rent. And I spoke to the mayor this afternoon, and he said as far as the city of Fayetteville is concerned with being the water provider, is he's called everyone to make sure there's absolutely no way that the water will be turned off for any Fayetteville Housing Authority resident. So this just doesn't make sense to me. I know Melissa Terry is here to be able to speak to us about this, but when key players from Fayetteville Housing are not aware of this, I just have to wonder what is going on. And it seems like we don't have our facts straight. If they don't pay their utility bills, nobody's going to be shut off tomorrow. So we need to hear a lot more about this. And really, what an awful message to send to say we've been sitting on $4 million, but we'll give you $10,000 to make sure your water's not turned off tomorrow. We surely can do better than that.
Justice Real Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a bunch of questions and concerns about this ordinance. Number one, I spoke to 3 of the 5 Fayetteville Housing Authority commissioners today to ask them about this ordinance, and none of them knew about it. Another thing that I'm concerned about is why this is coming out of the American Rescue Plan Fund, when I think it should, if we're going to do this, it should be more appropriately coming out of the ERA money. But regardless of which fund it comes out of, because these tenants' utilities are included in their rent, and we know that a lot of these tenants have already been submitted to be reimbursed through the ERA fund, my concern is that we're going to be in danger of double dipping from federal funds if their approval for the ERA funds goes through, because those utilities are included with their rent. So I'm concerned that this is a double dip. Another concern is that my understanding is that the utilities in question are for tenants of the Fayetteville Housing Authority Development nonprofit, which I just want to make clear is a separate entity from the Fayetteville Housing Authority, and this ordinance mixes those two very separate organizations together. So it's very unclear from this ordinance which of those two independent organizations this money is going to. And I know that one of our Fayetteville Housing Authority commissioners is here, Melissa Terry. If, with your permission, I'd like to ask her just a couple questions about, because I don't even know what utilities these are going to and what properties and things like that. And she might be able to shed some light on that. Oh, all right, all right.
Well, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any before public comment.
Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple notes because I want to try to get everybody as much information about this. You know, I can't speak to other board members not being aware of it. It's such a quickly moving topic. I think, from my understanding, it was a crisis. I want to be very clear that there are other outstanding utilities other than Fayetteville Water, and these people have been given a cutoff notice. You know, I can understand that there's a lot of questions about this. I think it's completely appropriate it comes out of the American Rescue Plan money. You know, but let me caution you. I have no interest in funding a crisis if there's not one. And if we hear from the director tonight and there's none, I would very gladly withdraw this ordinance if that's what we need to do, or table it indefinitely. And then finally, the double dip thing has come up. I've spoken a little bit about that with Councilor Lester, and he can probably inform us more. But what essentially can happen, we cannot allocate specifically just for utilities directly out of the emergency rental assistance money. It has to go to the tenant, and the tenant has to then pay those amounts. Now, as of double dipping, we're trying to fix a crisis here and help out these individuals who I think need a lot of help. If they get approved for my understanding is if they get approved for the emergency rental assistance, that those funds can be returned if the utilities have already been paid, and then of course we can absolutely appropriate this money to the FHA. But Councilor Lester, you might have more to say than that, or correct me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there other comments? We'll have public comment. Would the Fayetteville Housing Rep come forward, please?
Good evening. My name is Melissa Terry. I'm the chair of the Fayetteville Housing Authority. First of all, I'd just like to thank you so much. This is really kind to bring this forward. And we have been working with the county from the jump, Ms. Harris, Ms. Julie, and Judge Wood. We actually met about 2 months ago, maybe, to set up what our plan would be. In partnership with the county, and to Commissioner Rio Stafford's point, this was for FHA development, which is the component entity of the Fayetteville Housing Authority. So Patrick Deakins is correct that it's in the wheelhouse of the Housing Authority. It's just we have a subsidiary nonprofit that helps us do the non-public housing sides. So to the question of the utilities portion of it, in the second round of the emergency rental assistance, ERA 2, there was a provision in there for county and city governments to be able to work with larger landlords to work in bulk, to process our applications in bulk. And so the total amount that we are in arrears from unpaid rents, and I'm happy that we were able to carry this load while we did, but as you can imagine, it's killing us. The total amount in unpaid rents to date is $210,832.67. So fortunately, we're a nonprofit, but even a nonprofit, that's killer. And so we divided, in partnership with our conversation with Judge Wood and Ms. Harris, we divided our total number of renters who are in arrear into 3 different groups. And so the first group is our current tenants, so those who are most at risk of being evicted and once the moratorium lifts. And then the second group is previous tenants, and then the third group is tenants who went all the way back to April 2020. So this first group that we're carrying right now, these are my notes from working with Ms. Julie all morning and color coding and getting our applicants fully, what we call in the hopper, loaded all of their information, loaded into the portal. So the total amount that is due for this first group is $80,591. So as part of that first group, in that payment is their utilities. And so you're not wrong. The utilities are at risk of being shut off, but it's because with the tenants, we have so much unpaid rent that we have gotten as much grace as we have been able to get from the utilities. So we have been full court press for the past at least week, but steadily even before that, of making sure that we are resolving every issue, every missing piece of paper. You know, sometimes tenants can't find this or that form. We actually did direct, like we took tables out to some of our low-income apartments and took computers and took hotspots and made sure that we could get people loaded up into the portal. So all that to say, I wish Judge Wood was here tonight, but all that to say that in the spirit of J.P. Deacon's motion, I would ask that y'all approve the full amount of this first group out of the ERA funds, the Emergency Rental Assistance Funds, which is the $80,591. And in that disbursement, that covers all of the utilities. So then that would free us up to come to the next cohort or the next group and be able to bring them through as well. So those are the sort of the facts as far as our current process in the Washington County Emergency Rental Assistance Portal. And Ms. Julie and Ms. Sharon have been super helpful with the technical components of it, and then just being able to, we've just had lots of staff and lots of volunteers who have gone directly to some of our tenants, have massive transportation issues or barriers. And since it's only a digital portal, which is, you know, something that makes it really efficient on our side, on the processing side, some of our residents don't have smartphones and don't have Wi-Fi or anything like that. So we tabled at their apartments, took the whole setup, took the laptops, everything. And so that's how we've been able to get everybody into the portal. And so I just want to say that I'm very appreciative of the county's support through this whole process. We had a plan going into it that this is how we were going to do it. And we were going to do it one whole group at a time. And as of this afternoon, our last call with Ms. Harris at I don't even know what, like 3:30 or something, I think that we've gotten everybody's paperwork where it needs to be. So that's what I know.
Justice Heckey.
Here, I do have a question, just point blank. So do you support this ordinance, yes or no? And who called it in?
I did not request it. I was actually surprised.
No, do you support this ordinance?
Well, I would support the amendment of this ordinance to actually reflect, to reflect what is currently in motion.
So you pretty much want us to withdraw this ordinance completely, and then maybe next month or month after that work on what you're talking about?
No, my request would be to amend the ordinance to reflect the actual amount due, because the utilities are...
But that doesn't give the public enough time to investigate and to ask any questions on, well, wait a minute, this is coming from two different funds. why is it coming out of that fund and not this fund?
Well, it
And it doesn't give the JPs on this court to ask questions either. So point blank, is this, do you want us to withdraw this amendment, this ordinance, and rewrite it? But not for tonight.
My request would be that you amend it in full committee, because JP Deacon's not wrong. The utilities are due, and they are pending disconnect, but it's not because the tenants haven't paid. It's because
that's why I feel that I just would like to make a motion that we withdraw this ordinance. Thank you.
But we actually really need it.
Thank you. We have a motion to table. Do we have a motion to table it till when?
We actually really need it.
I would say 60 days.
Okay. Is there a second?
Also to committee. Going back to committee.
Okay. We have a motion to table. Is there a second on the motion? If there's no second, the motion fails. Justice Lemming.
How many families is this going to affect? How many people?
The total amount would be, we're looking at 27. So we're looking at about 53.
53, and that'll take care of them for the month of, when will that
That would
catch them up to present?
That would catch them up totally and zero everybody out.
53.
And the amount of $80,591 reflects 38% of the overall rent that's in arrears. So that's why we wanted to do it in small groups at a time. Number one, so that we could practice the process of getting all of our people together and what they actually needed. So
I'll move to make an amendment to do the 8519.
We have a motion to amend. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
What was the motion to amend to what?
To not do the 10, but do the 8591. What's the need?
8,500?
$80,519.65. That's correct.
very close, $80,591. I would. You're right.
And what fund? From the American Rescue Plan?
Would it be better there or the ERA?
It'd be illegal to do it out of the ERA.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Discussion. I can't see the green lights in the.
Yes, my question is, if I understand what you're saying correctly, all this money's already in the queue, is that correct?
Right. We are.
And so it would, in my mind, it would go through the regular process. If it's already in the queue, then it's already set up and it will be approved through that process. So I'm not sure why we would need to do this,
It's
exactly.
not double dipping.
It's not double dipping, but if it's already in the process,
Well-
I'm trying to figure out what it seems to me that it should go through the regular process, which is what it's doing.
Correct. The issue is that it has moved through the process very slowly, and not through any fault of the county. It took a while to set up the system correctly. We worked with we pre-met with the county judge and Miss Julie, and then we had the next week, we had a training session with the vendor for how to get all of the residents in the hopper, so to speak. And then we began the process of onboarding the residents and getting all of their information. And it just took longer than we anticipated to work all of the kinks out of the system. And so now we're at this pressure point of we have everybody's information in, but it's pending. And so my feeling would be that if y'all approve that, the county receives the funds. We don't receive the funds directly from your vendor. The county does. And so that if you approve the funds, then the county doesn't have to redistribute the funds to us because it would be a done deal. It would just come to y'all and stay here.
Well, I guess my question is, if it's already in the hopper and everything is completed, how long does that process take once everything is done?
Are you asking me? I'd be happy to speak to this.
If you, Mr. Chair, would that be okay?
Yeah, come on over.
So our conversations today were about people in the portal who didn't have all their information in. So I can't speak to the number that Ms. Terry says is outstanding. I don't know how many is outstanding. I know that Fayetteville Housing, starting in August, have about 40, somewhere near there, tenants who have applied. I don't know anything about giving in a bulk amount out of ERA. I do not think that can be done. The money is not with our vendor, so it doesn't come from our vendor to us. We have it. If we pay a vendor, it comes from here. So we know about these utility bills because an employee reached out to us, wanted to be anonymous, told us that there had been disconnect served on tenants who had already paid their utilities through their rent. I reached out to Ms. Terry and just didn't give her the ordinance. I just said I can approach the chair of finance to sponsor an ordinance, and I believe in my email, if I remember correctly, I said we'll do $10,000 and see if we could get Fayetteville to match us. So that's what we did. It was an emergency. She probably hasn't had time to talk to her board, but that's how this came about. And as far as how long it takes, it could be anywhere from 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It really depends on the tenant. So a landlord cannot apply on behalf of their tenant. The tenant must apply. So it takes two people. So when the tenant doesn't have all their information in, even though the landlord's entitled to that money, they're kind of just stuck until the tenant gets their information in. So I do realize that FHA has had a tough time probably getting all their tenants to comply. But these are not our guidelines. We can't lift any restrictions. We do exactly what the federal government asks, nothing more, nothing less. We're probably one of the easiest, even if it can be slow at times. We are one of the easiest dispersing ERA to get money from because we do nothing more than what the federal government tells us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Julie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things here. I feel a little bit derailed because I feel like we had an agreement today about what we were gonna help with.
You and I have never spoken.
Wait a minute. Let me speak.
We've never spoken.
Let me speak. Let me finish. Let me say this. You know, if we were to allocate all this money like you're requesting, we're sidestepping a federal verification process that these applicants are subject to go through. I mean, I trust that you would give us an accurate number, but there's no way to know if all those people are eligible or all those people would be approved. I'm uncomfortable with that. I'm going to be honest with you, too. I'm uncomfortable with your organization. I'm uncomfortable with your money management things and things that I'm hearing. I'm not going to address any of those because I don't have any specifics out of respect for you. But to also allocate you that much money, I'm uncomfortable with that. But I am comfortable allocating this specific amount of money for this specific purpose so that we can help these citizens who I believe are very vulnerable. And in the spirit of what American Rental Assistance is all about, I know we can't directly out of that fund, but what I'm saying is if there's processing delays, we can mitigate a little bit of that with this amount of money. But to sidestep that process, no, that makes me very uncomfortable. I can't support that at all. And I mean, there's no way I can support that amendment. We're going way outside of what I thought was a crisis that we could be addressed for tomorrow and that you had agreed to.
Can I respond to that? So I totally agree with your approach. I felt a little caught flat-footed myself because I didn't really even know this was happening. And I think we're looking at the same issue just from You know, it's like if you're looking at a pickle bucket and one's reading the label and one's reading the ingredients, it's still a pickle bucket. Like, we're looking at the same thing. What I'm going off of is a memo from the Department of Treasury from June 24th. And in that guideline, they provide a section that instructs municipalities and county governments to provide a streamlined payment option for utility providers and large landowners to make accessing emergency rental assistance on behalf of multiple tenants easier and more attractive. Treasury is clarifying how grantees may achieve economies of scale by obtaining information in bulk from utility providers and landlords with multiple units to help speed the determination of household eligibility and to bundle in a single payment approved amounts for the benefit of multiple eligible tenants. So that's where I was coming from. I didn't mean to get crossways with you. And so that what we had verified in the system was that amount. And so that's what I'm bringing to you. If this body wants to, and it's not in conflict with anything, if this body wants to provide $10,000 in bridge funding, that will definitely be applied towards our utility payments. And if it doesn't conflict with anything, we will be happy and thankful to accept that. That was the approach that I just read to you, is where we have been coming from the policy governance perspective. And so I didn't have a conversation with Patrick Jenkins before this, but if we had of, then I think that we're totally on the same page as far as yes, this needs to happen in some form or fashion. And whatever this body decides, on behalf of our organization, very thankful for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have some questions I just quickly want to address. Is that just my understanding from reading the news reports, what's been in the Democrat Gazette and everything, is that the heart of the issues that the nonprofit that's connected to the Housing Authority, the heart of the issues are related to the pandemic. It's because these are low-income folks. They have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic in terms of their employment and things like that. And so as a result of that, they have been unable to pay their rent, pay their bills, a disproportionate number of these folks, and therefore, and then also there has been an eviction moratorium this whole time, which probably you guys wouldn't be evicting them hopefully anyway, but regardless, obviously I can see how a nonprofit can get into debt that way. Earlier today, I also spoke to Mayor Jordan, and he asked me to reiterate here at the Quorum Court at this meeting that the city will not be cutting off water service to any residents of either the Fayetteville Housing Authority or Fayetteville Housing Authority Development, either entity. So my question is, and you may not know this answer, but maybe you do, when you subtract the amount of the water bills, because we know now from the mayor directly that those aren't going to be cut off, what utility bills or what utilities are in danger of actually being cut off? What is the amount of that minus the water bills? And has the Housing Authority, what kind of efforts has the Housing Authority been doing to work with these utilities or contact them to work with extending those deadlines, if possible?
Okay, one moment, please.
Sure. I know those are like two different questions.
Nope, I got you. So taking away the amount that's owed to the Fayetteville, to the city of Fayetteville for the water, the remaining amount is $15,507.67.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
$15,507.67.
Okay, and that's minus, yes, you said that's minus the water bills.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And then you may not know, but do you know whether the staff has been working with the utilities to try and get these deadlines extended, or is everything just sort of at the end of its rope now? And what are those deadlines?
So the amount we have for, there's SWEPCO and, let's see, this one is also for SWEPCO. So yes, they are not offering partial payment plans because that was our suggestion. And like, you know, we're so close to getting these funds allocated through the county, through ERA, but they're not accepting payment plans at this time. So just to say that if the county, again, I appreciate this so much, that if the county would help us, wants to help us contribute, I can't speak for the city or making it contingent to the city, but if the county wanted to offer us some bridge funding of $10,000, that would immediately resolve the most pending issues, and that would take the pressure off enormously and buy us enough time to JP Esri's point, to get the process, what's already in the hopper, through. So.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there other public comment? Ma'am?
Oh, sorry.
The public comment is germane to the motion, so you think you need to take up the motion. Take up the motion?
Okay.
To amend?
The motion is to
amend the amount?
To amend the ordinance to $80,591. Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson.
No.
Butch Pond.
No.
Lance Johnson.
No.
Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison. The motion fails.
Okay, the motion fails. We go back to the original motion. Justice DeWeet, the motion is to approve the $10,000, and we'll take public comment on that motion only right now.
Hi, my name's Bryce Northington. I'm a college student, University of Arkansas. First time here. This is interesting to watch. All in all, I feel a little uncomfortable saying this, but it feels like we've been kind of sidestepping a lot of procedure tonight and kind of sidestepping a lot of what's kind of in need here, right? The economy has just recently recovered. We had 3 million jobs that are still out and lost, and you think about Arkansas, it's going to get really hit by this stuff. You think the Lindsay company was charging people $10 a day a couple months back starting just for like being able to cover rent notices and such. And the frustration is like these people needed like money yesterday. And the reality is like just $10,000, like the average home is, or rent's going to be like $500 a month just to live in Fayetteville because it's a rapidly growing city. And I'm really uncomfortable because you think about like the few people you see on the corner homeless already, and it's just, I don't know, I'm stupid, but like, I feel like a lot of people are going to suffer if we don't get enough passed in that moment. And I feel like $10,000 just, it's really not going to cut it. That's really what I got to say. So, thank you.
I'm sorry, Justice Stafford, let me find the right buttons here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to amend this ordinance, amend the amount of the ordinance to $15,507.67, which would cover the full amount of the utilities that are imminently due minus the City of Fayetteville's water bill, which we know they're not going to cut off.
We have a motion to amend. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
What do you want me to say? No, I didn't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, while I appreciate the motion to amend, I think it's very important that I want us to partner with Fayetteville on this. You know, we have American Rescue Plans that are for the county, and Fayetteville got the American Rescue Plans that are for the city. And I think it's awful. You know, we're going out of our way here, I think, to help, and I don't think it's asking a whole lot of our municipality to partner with us and help out with this. So no, I can't support that. I can't support the amendment. I think we're kind of learning a very hard lesson here tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the difficulty is that the city of Fayetteville spent all of its CARES money helping people, and the county's still sitting on it. So if we're talking about being a partner with the city, we've been an absent member of that partnership to date. The fact that we can't find it within ourselves to give an additional $5,000 to make sure people's utilities aren't cut off, it kind of sounds like we're pretty heartless if that's the issue. But I think the bigger issue is timing. If the whole purpose of this was to make sure that something happens quickly, the mayor of the city of Fayetteville, who's the only person in the city that I think was told about this afternoon, is not in a position to fund it immediately. It just so happened that this was able to be brought to this entity tonight, but the city won't be able to come up with $5,000 by tomorrow. They won't probably be able to come up with $5,000 by next week because they would have to have a meeting, and they actually publish their agendas with ordinances on them. So to say that we can't find it in ourselves to fund the $5,000 because we want the city to partner, well, the city could maybe come in later with some more of the money. There's more money. There's $80,000 more money. So if we can't find it in our hearts to help these folks and do it because we have the power to do it tonight for tomorrow and the city doesn't, we're not being a good partner to the city of Fayetteville anyway. So Ms. Terry is saying that this $15,000 would do it for tomorrow. That's the best way to get it done. Thanks.
Justice Deakins.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate us sticking to facts. Here's the facts. The $10,000 was due, what was due for tomorrow. The other amounts had some more time. I had never referenced the CARES Act money. I'm referencing the American Rescue Plan money. And I think Fayetteville probably still has more than that. I hope they haven't spent all that yet, but we can't independently verify that. And lastly, the city of Fayetteville is very good about having special meetings. I think that they could create a special meeting for this, and if that's important enough to them, then they can fund it. And that's what I have comment on that amendment. Thank you so much.
Other comments? Do we have public comment?
No, it's not a motion to amend.
We have a motion to amend. Ms. Patty? The motion is to amend the amount to 15,000.
500.
Okay. Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Jim Wilson.
No.
Butch Pond.
No.
Lance Johnson.
No.
Shannon Marty. No. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. No. Patrick Deakins.
No.
Lisa Ecke. No. Sam Duncan.
No.
Shonda Washington.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
The motion fails.
What was the vote? Motion failed. The motion failed. Let's go back to the original motion. Where are we? We need public comment on the original motion. Who wants to speak?
Thank you for letting me come up again.
Ma'am, please state your name.
I'm sorry. I'm Melissa Terry, Fayetteville resident. To the point of the time is of the essence, urgency that J.P. Deacons brings to the conversation, that does, for funds that are due tomorrow, which is, there are some that are, to tie it to the city doesn't have the luxury of having a meeting tomorrow, so they can't vote to match or not match. But just to clarify, the utility that is actually due tomorrow is for $5,772.52. So the rest of them have a little bit more runway, and so perhaps through what's in the hopper, the rest will come in. But I just wanted to clarify, I mean, at the risk of shooting myself in my own foot, but our organization's foot, but that the actual utility, looking at my list, the actual utility that is for tomorrow is $5,772.52. If you leave the motion as is at $10,000, then that provides us some buffer for the next cutoff date is the 25th. So let's just go with, like, maybe it takes a couple of weeks for our stuff to get in now that we've worked out all those kinks. And so that would actually be, the next amount due is $4,457.08. And so that brings us right up to the $10,000 mark. So that would be super helpful. That would be exactly the bridge that we need, and then would keep us out of conflict with any of the funds that we're waiting to come on through. So, and we would sincerely appreciate it. Ma'am?
Is there other public comment?
Did you have a question?
Okay, you ready for the question?
Okay.
Justice Real Stafford.
I wanted to offer just one clarifying amendment to change references in this ordinance from.
Counselor.
This is more of a Scrivener's thing.
You gave J.P. Stafford.
Yep, no, okay.
This is basically.
Suggest your amendment quickly.
This
Let's
is
get on
just
with it.
basically a Scrivener's issue, is the references to Fayetteville Housing Authority should be changed to Fayetteville Housing Authority Development. Yeah.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
You'll accept it as a friendly amendment. Okay, it's been accepted. Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Jim Wilson. Yes. Butch Pond. Yes. Lance Johnson. Yes. Shannon Marty. Yes. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Yes. Patrick Deacons. Yes. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan. Yes. Chandra Washington. Yes. Eva Madison. Yes. This ordinance passes.
Thank you. This ordinance passes. We're going to recess for 10 minutes. We'll reconvene at 8 o'clock. Thank you.
I don't guess we just let it run. I guess we just let it run. Which ordinance was it that you didn't have a copy of for me? That emergency.
What I had asked them to do was to give me a file, rather than I got your theory. All unique additional beyond the four that are already. I got it. I am.
This meeting is back in order. The next item on the agenda is the second ordinance that was added tonight. Mr. Counselor, would you read the ordinance?
Item 17 is an ordinance establishing the Washington County annual budget for the fiscal and calendar year 2022.
Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to appreciate my colleagues for adding this to the agenda tonight. I also want to take a moment. I want to really thank the Budget Committee members. I think we had a pretty aggressive time frame this year, and I think everybody worked very hard on this budget. I welcome additional robust discussion about it, but what I'll say is I'm proud of the work we did as a committee. I think this comes with an eye towards fiscal responsibility, but I'd also like to, I know there's been a lot of concern about the actual raises being formalized, and those are in these budget controls. We're going to invest in our employees, and we're going to also make some very good investments in equipment. And so, I'll finish by saying I don't know that there's ever a perfect budget for 15 of us to come into a room and completely support unanimously, but I think there was a lot of good work that went into this, and I would move passage of this budget for Washington County for next year.
We have a motion to pass. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Who's first? Justice Madison.
I move to send this back to committee so that the issues that the public defenders raises and the very clear issues with juvenile court can be discussed, and also that raises be affirmatively put on an agenda so that employees have an opportunity to come to a meeting and speak about raises, because there hasn't been an opportunity for that. So I move that this go back to committee.
We have a motion and a second to refer the budget back to committee. Is there discussion on the motion? J.P. Pond?
I have concerns with the public defenders, the pay difference in public defenders and the prosecutors. I would be in favor of that part of it going back to committee for further discussion. Thank you.
Justice Hires.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of this. I wanted to say that we are frequently asked in this body over and over again to listen to the professionals when they tell us what they need. And we tend to do that, but there's 3 instances within this budget that I feel like we are neglecting to listen to we're neglecting to listen to the professionals when they tell us what they need. So I would specifically like to see this go back to the Budget Committee to take a look at the issues with the Public Defender's Office and the issues with Division 3 and Division 8 Court. Thank you.
Justice Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. The thing I wanted to say, the most important thing we can invest in is our youth. And if we can stop a youth from going to jail by working with them when they're young, I think it's a great investment. We hear the deputies say that once they get in jail, they come right back, something like a 76% return rate. So the only way to really get to that is when they're young. And I think that we really need to, and I thought we would just do it this way, not send it back to committee. I thought we would address different things now and not send it back. But I would like to see the detention get what they need is 5 more new ones, not necessarily split them up. They need 5 new ones. And everybody would say, well, that's so dramatic. But if you think about our population has not just doubled over the last 20 years. I'm sorry, can't use your name for an example, but been here 20 years, the population's more than doubled and tripled in 20 years, and yet we're still kind of at the same pace that we were back then, and we haven't moved our we haven't provided the resources as we've gone along with the population explosion. And now then we've got all these people and all these kids, and we're losing those kids. I'll just tell it like it is. We're losing those kids, and I hate to see that, because when the next time you see them, they'll be down at the county detention center. And I've seen the difference, and I applaud Judge Zimmerman. I think she's the best in the country, and has done as much as she could with such a little budget that she's had over the years. And so if we don't want to send it back, let's talk about doing it right now. I want 5 new detention officers. And then the other thing I want is equal pay for, I don't want to, if I get one of my children, God forbid, or my grandchildren have to go to court, I want them to have, and they can't afford it, I want them to have at least as good as the defenders or the prosecutor. I was shocked to find out that we're not equal on that. I think there should be equal pay on that. There ought to be a bracket. Maybe we do that in Personnel Committee later, but it ought to be a bracket where this is the bottom, this is the top, and they fit somewhere in that bracket. And those 2 brackets ought to be the same. I mean, just pretty plain and simple to me. And so I'd like to see us, if we're not, I don't want to send it back, but let's add 5 more juvenile, I may be saying it wrong, juvenile officers to the court, because that's what they need. So do I need to make that as a motion, or do we want to discuss it, or tell me what the proper thing is? Because I'll make the motion. Oh, do we? Okay. Then I'll wait. It's illegal to make a motion, but at least I have a discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I conferred with County Attorney Lester that the state determines the base pay for the public defender, not the county and not personnel. We don't have that authority. They're saying no. So the state has nothing to do with setting your salaries? Not for the not for the county positions. Have you all ever come to JSAP or gone through personnel? I mean, my point is, all these years that I've served on personnel, this has never come before personnel. So, when?
Ma'am, would you wait until the chair gives you the floor, please?
Turn on your mic. But thank you, sir.
From Justice Ecke, what the state sets the pay scale for the state employees. And they don't set the pay scale for the county employees. Is that correct?
That is correct. How many county employees do you have? We have 5 county attorneys.
How many state?
There's 17 in all, so 12 state. The specifics of it are written in my budget request.
I've been on the Personnel Committee since 2015, and I've never seen y'all come before the Personnel Committee asking or go through JSAP to reassess or reevaluate the salaries of the 5 county employees. And I've been chairman twice, and I've never had this come before me asking for the personnel needs.
We have been told that we're not governed for the attorney positions by JSAP. And as for the Personnel Committee, I have asked for this on one occasion, and I reintroduced it because it was requested and suggested within the...
When? Because, I mean, I hold myself responsible. If I received an email or a correspondence from you requesting to have this conversation, then I failed as a chairman to bring you and put you on the agenda. So that's my concern, because we get accused of all sorts of things. I mean,
I'm not
vicious,
accusing
malicious
you of
things.
anything.
Okay, but I just wanted to make that clear. I mean, I've never had a request. Have you ever requested to talk to me about increasing the salaries?
I did it once before you were part of the Quorum Court, and they recommended it on, and the Quorum Court then addressed it as a whole.
Okay.
And I reintroduced it at this time because it was recommended within the criminal justice assessment that this court ordered 2 years ago, and they made the recommendation for it. What I sent today also included letters from Judge Taylor, Judge Lindsay, and the prosecutor Matt Durrett supporting it as well.
And I read all of those emails, and I understand where they're coming from, and that's great, and I support the employees from Washington County, but I just don't want to be accused of being irresponsible and neglecting to even consider your personnel needs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to I think the motion that's on the floor. This discussion right now is why this does not need to go back to the Budget Committee. You know, we hear so many people, the Budget Committee has sent this to the full Quorum Court. It's time for us to consider it as a body of the whole and have comments and amendments and vote on things. There's no need to send it back to the Budget Committee. That would only delay this work another 30 days. And I know that maybe some people would prefer that, but I'd like to get this budget passed for Washington County. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that the sentiment of this body is that we need to trust the expertise of the elected officials and the department heads. And as a member of the Budget and Finance Committee, in my opinion, when the Public Defender's Office did their presentations and the other district judges did their presentations, they were very thorough. They gave compelling reasons why we should accept the budget that they presented. And in both cases, we rejected what the experts said. I believe that the responsible thing for us to do is to send this back to committee. I understand, yes, it may delay us by 30 days, but it's September. I don't believe that we're going to find ourselves in the position that we were last year, waiting until the end of December to pass a budget. We have 30 days, if that's what it takes, for us to make sure that the lawyers that are in our public defenders are being paid a fair salary. We have 30 days to ensure that the judges have the personnel that they need in order to take care of the children of Washington County. I don't think this is something that can be rushed. I believe it probably should go back to committee for us to actually have more robust and serious conversations, because as a member of the Budget Committee, what I noticed was that we drilled them with questions. They gave us answers. Maybe we liked their answers, maybe we didn't, but we actually rejected the very thing that the experts said. And I believe we have to have confidence in our elected officials. We have to have confidence in our department chairs so that we can make sure that they have an appropriate budget in order to be able to run their department. So the responsible thing for us to do would be to send this back to committee.
I haven't commented tonight. The Budget Committee worked very hard on this. We have the Budget Committee before this court that the committee recommended. I think the appropriate way is for the people on the court that want to amend the budget to propose amendments, and let's get on with it. We have a motion on the floor to return it to the Budget Committee. Is there any other discussion? Do we need public comment? Nope. Okay, Miss Patty.
Robert Dennis. No. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. No. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
No.
Shannon Marty. No. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. No. Patrick Deakins. No. Lisa Ecke. No. Sam Duncan. No. Shonda Washington. Yes. Eva Madison. Yes. The motion fails.
So the motion to return it to committee failed.
Back on the motion to pass.
Okay, next, do we have a motion to pass this budget? Is, Justice Ecke?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment to Judge Zimmerman's budget and return the 5 employees that were removed from her budget, and I'd like for them to be put back into her budget. Thank you.
Justice Ecke, would you repeat that for the chair?
Thank you, sir. I'd like to make an amendment to the budget, to Judge Zimmerman's budget, and return the 5 employees that were removed from her budget and return them to her budget for 2022.
Is there a second?
You're unclear, I'm a little unclear. You want 5 additional?
No, it is returning the 5 that were removed from hers and sent to the Division 8.
And then what
I want
do we
them to
do
be
for
kept
Judge
with
Warren?
Division 3.
Not 5 additional?
No, not 5 additional. It's
Okay.
just
No. I
those
won't-
that were struck from her.
I won't second. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
No, there's no second.
Is there a second to the motion? Motion fails for lack of a second.
I tried.
Sure. J.P. Dennis?
I believe that J.P. Ecke and I are thinking the same thing. I'm saying I want to amend the Judge Zimmerman and Judge Warren's budgets to include 5 new officers. Detention officers. No, not detention. Yeah, want her to have her 5 back, but add 5 more to Judge Warren's. So I want new ones added, more.
So you want 5 in addition to the ones that have already been added?
No. Yes.
I believe we have a motion on the floor to amend to give the 5 that were transferred from Division 3 to Division 8 back to Division 3, and to then increase by 5 the positions to Division 8. Which positions, because each position is rated differently, so we would need to know, are they an intake officer or a FINS officer or some other officer?
I would have to defer to the judges on that, which way they need them.
Do we have a second to this motion?
Second.
Okay, discussion by the court. Justice Ushry?
Thank you very much. I would like for, if we don't mind, if Judge Zimmerman could tell us exactly what those positions would be, so we can know exactly what we're talking about.
Justice Washington.
Sure. I feel like we really need to hear from Judge Warren about what, if we're adding 9 new positions into Judge Warren's court, what we need that input for this motion in order to know what those positions would be. For example, I know that I think one of the issues is that in the budget as it stands, Judge Warren's court wouldn't have any of those individuals above a grade 19, whereas the original request included a grade 21 position and a grade 20 position, but there wasn't any room in the budget in order to, when you were transferring people over, to increase any of those positions above grade 19. There wasn't any room in the budget for that. So I'd like to know, out of the 11 positions that Judge Warren originally requested, what 9 would work for her office if we're creating 9 new positions for Judge Warren's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few things I want to say, and then I have a suggestion about how we proceed here. One, I think where I was coming from the Budget Committee on this is I know the need is great, but I have to look at it as our criminal justice system as a whole. And the needs are great in a lot of those areas, and we're doing a lot of things to change that. So I feel like it was prudent to take a step in this direction with these judges and their officers to take a step in the right direction, but also be fiscally prudent. What I'd also remind my colleagues of is we can continue to monitor this throughout next year and supplement these judges as they need more help. Here's what I see tonight that really concerns me. Judge Zimmerman and Judge Warren, you guys are so passionate about what you do. It's contagious. I get it from you when I'm around you. But there does not seem to be collaboration between you two, and I want to really challenge you to invest in that because Washington County needs our juvenile judges to work in collaboration with one another. And it's going to be so important that we do that so we can work together to bring the best thing we can do for Washington County. And so I'm really worried about some of the friction that I'm seeing here tonight. Judge Warren, it was never the intention of this court to move positions over and you terminate those people in those positions. And so that troubles me tonight. I want to follow up a little bit on that because that's very concerning for me that we have dedicated people in those roles and that we're hearing that there's been threats made to terminate those positions. From what I'm hearing from the court right now, it sounds like the 2 issues remaining on the budget are the staffing for Division 3 and Division 8 and the public defender's compensation. There's no reason to send this back to budget, but I would like to remind my colleagues if we vote tonight and the budget does not pass, it'll roll to next month and it might give some of us the opportunity to answer some of these questions. I'm a little bit taken aback that this process has been going on for several months and anybody could have gotten these questions answered. There's no surprise here about where we're at. So I challenge you guys that if this rolls to another month, let's get these questions answered and do what we think's best and bring these amendments back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer the question on Judge Warren's juvenile intake officers and other staffing in the grades that they received, that is not our doing. That comes through JSAP. It's a job evaluation assessment process program that the county has in place to protect us from being biased and lawsuits coming in. These positions were graded at that point. We ourselves did not grade them. That is what it's been assessed, and that's what it is. That's the so to say that we're the ones who set that and that they should be graded higher than what it is not, we cannot do that. I cannot go and say, Blair Johansson, you need to do this, and you need to give Diane Warren higher grades on their intake officers. Intake officers are based on experience and education, and it's given a value, and the value then is given the salary, period, and that protects the county. Either way, that's the way it is. Thank you, sir.
Well, my apology for not coming prepared to change the budget, but I did come prepared to discuss the budget because we didn't have a lot of discussion time from us setting out in the public. And I remember the days when all 15 of us were on the Finance Committee. And so I apologize for not having it beforehand, but it doesn't take away from the fact that we have a lot of youth that need a lot of help, and these folks are providing it for them. I say we go back and look at their original budget then. If you want it to spelled out, they had it spelled out in their original budget, and I'd take a friendly amendment, or I'd change my motion to include their original budget, which would take care of the description, the prices, and the people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We didn't come to prepared tonight to amend the budget because it wasn't on the agenda. We also couldn't ask questions necessarily in committee because we were relegated to the audience. And at this last meeting, which last Tuesday, where all the budgets were reviewed, there were a few of us that had COVID and couldn't participate and were not given the opportunity to participate virtually. So I watched it at home in quarantine on YouTube without the ability to ask questions or provide input, and was assured by watching that meeting that we weren't passing an ordinance. And here we are considering an ordinance. But let me say that I think that Judge Warren is sort of being painted in an unfair light. I know it sounds like she was going to terminate people, but she's adamantly shaking her head that that's not what's going to happen. I think the difficulty is that you're saying, I'm going to take 5 of Judge Zimmerman's current employees and just move them to Judge Warren without giving Judge Warren any say over who works for her. That's a problem. Judge Zimmerman should get to decide who works for Judge Zimmerman, and Judge Warren should get to decide who works for Judge Warren. We shouldn't say, okay, Judge Zimmerman, pick 5 people that have to go work for Judge Warren. Would any of us like that to happen? No. So let's be fair with what's happening, but we need to let the budgets be decided by the people who need them in this circumstance, because we don't know about juvenile court and what they need. But for us to say, well, you can do with less, and it's really rich to tell 2 female judges that they need to get along more. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. Did we ever get clarification on the 5 positions that we were proposing to be returned to Judge Zimmerman's budget? Did we ever get an answer on that? I know we asked, and I don't know that we got an answer.
Well, they would be the 5 positions that were voted to be transferred.
Right. So what were those positions? So
Slot numbers 0403010, 0403014, 0403020, 0403024, and 25.
Thank you very much. So what is the motion that's on the floor?
The motion on the floor is to amend to send the 5 employees that were transferred or put into transfer to Division 8 back to Division 3, and to add 5 new positions to Division 8.
Justice Simon?
Yeah, I guess if I have other questions, I'll come back.
Thank you, Chair. I call the question.
Second.
Call the question, takes a supermajority to pass that.
There's no discussion. There's no discussion.
Oh, there's not a second?
No, there's a second, but there's no discussion.
No discussion. Oh. We're voting to call the question, to move the previous question.
We're not voting on the previous amendment. We're voting on ending debate and then voting on the question on the floor, which is the motion made by J.P. Dennis.
Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. No. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Do you say yes? Yes. Willie Lemming. Abstain. Jim Wilson. Yes. Butch Pond. Yes. Lance Johnson. Yes. Shannon Marty. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes. Bill Ussery. Yes. Patrick Deakins. Yes. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan. Yes. Shonda Washington. No. Eva Madison. The motion passes.
The motion passes. We vote on the original motion?
That's correct.
We vote on the original motion now, Ms. Patty?
The original motion made by J.P. Dennis was a motion to amend the Division III budget by adding the 5 positions back into the Division III budget and then creating 5 new positions in the Division VIII budget, in addition to what was already passed out of committee.
Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Abstain. Jim Wilson. No. Butch Pond. Yes. Lance Johnson. No. Shannon Marty. No. Sean Simons. No, ma'am. Bill Ussery. Yes. Patrick Deakins. No. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Shonda Washington. Eva Madison. So 7 for, 7 against, and 1 abstention. So it fails.
J.P. Johnson's not where he can vote on his machine.
I voted no, and I don't have a button to push.
Back to the main motion. The original motion was a motion to pass.
Okay, we have the main motion, the original motion. We have a motion to pass that motion. We need additional discussion or not?
I think we've got to have a second.
Are we ready for the question?
No, this is a motion to pass item 17, which is the budget. You need a second. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to pass that discussion. Justice Madison.
I make a motion to amend to make the pay for the 5 county public defenders the same as the pay for the county prosecutors, consistent with what they originally proposed.
I have no idea what she said.
Yeah. The motion on the floor is to amend the public defender's pay to include the additional amounts to make them equal to the prosecuting attorneys, which is what they initially asked for. And there was a second.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Yes, there was a second.
Any discussion? JP Simon?
I apologize, Chair. I was out for the most previous finance and budget meeting. What is that additional amount? Do we have round number? 55,000, 60,000? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's $55,333.
Is there other discussion? You ready for the question? Ms. Patty?
Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Jim Wilson. No. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Lance Johnson. No. Shannon Marty. No. Sean Simons. Yes. Bill Usry. Yes. Patrick Deakins. No. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan. Chandra Washington? Yes. Eva Madison? Yes. It passes.
Okay, are we back to the original motion again? To pass the budget
As amended.
as amended. Justice Hires.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still not comfortable with the Division 3, Division 8 situation. We're leaving it as is, which we have been told is a problem. We've received letters that it's a problem. So I think that we either need to hash this out or table this so that we can have a month to figure this out. And I'm not being obstructionist, and I'm not trying to delay. I'm trying to do it right. And if that means we need to take a little time, then that's okay. It's September, like you said. This isn't... I just want to do this right. So actually, I'm going to make a motion that we table this for another month so that we can get this situation with Division 3 and Division 8 under control.
Is that a motion to table this item completely, the agenda item? To next month?
Discussion.
No discussion on the table, yeah. There's no discussion, it's just a vote.
What are we tabling?
Tabling the budget. The motion on the floor is to table the budget, item 17, until next month's Quorum Court meeting, and there was a second. There's no discussion on a motion to table.
Okay. Are you ready for the question? The motion is to table. Ms. Patty.
Robert Dennis. No. Suki Hires. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Jim Wilson. No. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
No.
Shannon Marty. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes. Bill Usry. Yes. Patrick Deakins. No. Lisa Ecke. No. Sam Duncan. Chandra Washington. Yes. Eva Madison. Yes. I have 9 for and 6 against, so it passes.
Motion to table passes. We will go on to committee reports. If I can find the right page. County Services, Justice Duncan.
The report's in your packet.
Finance and Budget, Justice Deakins.
Report is in the packet, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. There was no jail and law committee. There was no personnel committee. Without objection, this meeting's adjourned. Can you tell our judge that he owes me?